Now, people who've been with me a long time know that this is very unusual for me to read the Gospel of St. Thomas, but why not? When I read it, it's pure Vedanta. Jesus Christ, like Buddha, Mohammed, no difference. This is the treasure which endures. This is the seventh saying. And these were the words of Jesus that St. Thomas is recalling. The kingdom of the Father is like a man, a merchant, who collected merchandise and then found a beautiful pearl. The kingdom of the Father, or supreme consciousness, is like a man, a merchant, who collected merchandise and then found a beautiful pearl. The merchant was very wise, very prudent. He sold all the merchandise he had collected, but kept that one pearl for himself. You should also seek for the treasure which fails not, which knows no separation. I'm adding that from Goethe's paper. You should also seek for the treasure which fails not, which endures, where no moth comes near to devour, and where no worm destroys. And this remarkable commentary, this is a lovely book, but I know Sri Brahmananda would say, don't try to read it by yourself. Read it this way. I'll be reading for Saturdays to come because I'm caught with it. Read it through this radio because it is his wisdom that is opening our eyes. The way I read will be direct transmission because behind that reading is the power of Sri Brahmananda. If you look outside, then the world of the many exists, the world of multiplicity. If you look within yourself, then the world of one exists. If you go outside, you may achieve much, but you will miss the one world within. And this is Osho. That world within is your very center. You know, if I looked for two readings that synchronize so perfectly, I'd still be looking because I have so many books at home. It happens that the readings come together. As Dharmadev reminded me, stop saying 2,000 programs, Joan. We've been coming for 3,000 programs. How do you find readings back to back talking about exactly the same thing, the center? If you go outside, you may achieve much, but you will miss the one world within. And that world within is your very center. If you miss it, you have missed everything. You may attain much, but that much will not count much in the end. Because unless one attains to oneself, nothing is attained. If you are a stranger to yourself, even the whole world will not fulfill you. If you have not gone into your own being, if you don't have your own being, then all the riches will only make you poorer. This happens. The more riches you have, the more poverty you feel, because now you can compare. With outer riches, the inside, in comparison, looks poorer and poorer and poorer. Therefore, the paradox of the rich man: the richer he gets, the poorer he feels. And frankly speaking, you look at some of the wealthiest people in the world, the worse they look. The more money, the more things they acquire, the worse they look. The more we are stripped of our longing for outer possession, the simple look comes back. What is the simple look? The look of, what do the babies have, the children have? Innocency. The look of innocency. So breathtaking to behold, you can't take your eyes from a newborn. If I had a baby in my arms, you wouldn't hear anything. You wouldn't look at me. You'd be spellbound by this baby, because we're mesmerized, we're enchanted by the look of innocency. And these gurus tell us all we have to do is return to the pristine state of witnessing, and we will have that innocency again and again whenever we want. This is the paradox of the rich man. The richer he gets, the poorer he feels. The more he has, the more he feels he is empty, because the inner emptiness cannot be filled by outer things. Outer things cannot enter into your being. The inner emptiness can be filled only when you achieve yourself, when you attain to your own being. Make a clear distinction. The world outside is the world of the many, but the one is absent there. And that one is your goal. That one is within you. So if you're searching outside, you will miss. If you're searching for a love outside, fulfillment outside, wealthy, easy life outside, we're told we'll miss. Nothing will be of much help. Whatever you do will be a failure. The mind goes on saying, get that, attain that, then you'll be fulfilled. And when you attain it, the mind will again say, well, attain something else, then you will be fulfilled. The mind will also say, if you're not succeeding, it means you're not making enough effort. If you're not reaching, it means you're not running fast enough. And if you listen to the logic of the mind, which seems logical, but it's not, then you'll go on running and running and running. And in the end, there'll be nothing except death. The many is the realm of death. The one is the realm of the deathless. The seeker has to be sought, not in outside objects, but in your subjectivity. You've got to do it. You have to turn within. A conversion is needed, a turning, an absolute about turn is needed. So the eyes which see outside begin to see within. That sounds good, doesn't it? But here's the obvious question. How is that going to happen? Apparently, we've been missing that because some of us are still excited about a new job, a new friend, a new love, a new house, a new car, a new dog. We get very excited, a new baby, very excited. But that's the outside world, isn't it? Right? It's okay to be excited by that. I'm always excited by a new I won't say a dog, but a new friend, a new person coming to the ashram, a new personality in Dharma Day, new one in my side. That's wonderful. But it's not veiling that deepest, most profound truth that anything from the outside can never, never fulfill like that world within. That's the treasure. This is called the treasure which endures, which endures. How will it happen? How will it happen, that about turn? Unless you are totally, totally frustrated with your world outside, it cannot happen. If even a slight hope remains that something out there is going to make you happy, fulfill you, you're just going to go on running, moving. Failure is great, and with the failure of the many, a new journey starts. The sooner you fail, this is only the enlightened masters saying this. You're about to hear something that you may not have heard before. The sooner you fail in the outside world, the better. The sooner you get totally frustrated, the better. Why? Because failure in the outside becomes the first step towards the inner. Who is the wise man? I called Robin before wise. She has a wisdom. Who is the wise man? The wise one is the one who's ready to lose all for the one. And who is the fool? He who has lost himself and purchased ordinary things, who has sold the master and filled his house with useless things. This is a story I love. I've heard, once it happened, a friend of Mullah Nasruddin, who's considered the wise fool, I've heard, once it happened, a friend of Mullah Nasruddin became very, very rich. And when somebody becomes rich, he can't wait to go back to his old neighborhood, his old friends, his old village, to show all those people what he has attained. So he came from the capital to his tiny village. And just at the station, when he got off the train, he met Mullah Nasruddin. And he said, Mullah Nasruddin, you know, I made it. I become very, very, very rich. You can't even believe how rich I became. I have a palace with 500 rooms. It's a castle. Mullah Nasruddin said, I know a few people with 500 rooms in their houses. This upset the friend very much. He said, really? Well, I have 2 18-hole golf courses. I have 3 swimming pools and acres of greenery. Nasruddin replied, I know one man in the other town who also has 2 golf courses and 3 swimming pools. The rich man said, but in the house? Nasruddin said, well, listen, you may have made much money, but I've also not done too bad. I've got donkeys, horses, pigs, buffaloes, cows, chickens. The other man started laughing. He said, Nasruddin, lots of people have donkeys, horses, cows, chickens. Nasruddin stopped him in the middle and said, in the house? I love that. Whatsoever you get, whether it's 18 whole golf courses, 3 swimming pools, and 500 rooms, or donkeys, horses, and cows. Whatsoever you get outside will not make you rich, because really the house remains empty. You remain empty. Nothing enters into the house. These things remain outside because they belong to the outside. There's no way to put them in. And poverty is within. Had it been outside, then there would have been no problem. When we feel poor, it's because that feeling is coming from the poverty within. If you had felt the emptiness outside, on the periphery, then it could have been filled by houses, cars, horses, or anything. But your emptiness is felt inside. You feel meaninglessness within. It's not that you don't have a big house that is creating the trouble. It is that inside you feel totally meaningless. Why do you exist? Why this whole trouble of being in existence? Why be alive? Where is it leading? So every day, the morning, you wake up again to go. And there's nowhere to go. Every day in the morning, you get dressed. But you know by the evening, nothing is attained. No goal is attained. So again, you fall asleep. Again in the morning, the journey starts. The whole meaningless business of it. Inside, you go on feeling empty. There is nothing. So with outside things, you can at the most deceive others, but not yourself. How can you deceive yourself? The more things accumulate, the more life is wasted, because they have to be purchased at the cost of life. You are less alive. Death has come near. Things are growing more and more. The pile goes on becoming bigger and bigger, and inside you are shrinking. And the fear comes. What am I achieving? What am I reaching? Where am I reaching? What have I done with my whole life? You know, sometimes the movement of your life takes you early to your best teachers. I had always the need to be a do-gooder when I was in high school. I don't know what it was, maybe old memories of doing service. So I always volunteered to work in senior citizens' home, old age homes, or hospitals, veterans hospitals. But I asked for the people no one visits, people who have lost all their friends and children. In those days, anyone living to the 90s was considered like living to 120. So in this senior citizen home, it was a nursing home, I had 3 or 4 elderly women in their 90s. And it was as though they were reading from the same book. They'd all come from very active lives. They were very intelligent women. That's why they asked this question. They said, Joan, what does it all mean? They asked a 17-year-old. What does it mean? My whole life, I was running and after something and doing. For what? If I knew, because they'd been in the home 10 years, if I knew I was going to end up like this, I wouldn't have done half the things I did. I thought at the end was some pot of gold, some rainbow. It's old age, pain, emptiness, loneliness. What am I missing? Asking this little 17-year-old. And I said, well, I'm here. Do you want to go to the river? Take a walk? I just wanted them to feel happiness in the moment. But if you don't think I didn't go home with that question, to wake up before I'm so old that I'm asking, what's it all about? What did I do wrong? So I'm sure I went to that home for kind of self-aggrandizement, to feel I'm helping old people. But that's not what happened. I would come home depressed from that place because I was seeing my future. I didn't know it, but I was seeing the natural end to a life that is not aware, that we're just running like a gerbil on a treadmill. Just running. Gurdjieff calls it the race course of life. We're on a race course. We have to stop and pause once in a while and say, is what I'm doing helping my meditation, my peace of mind? Or perhaps, since life has presented this, like the old age home was my first guru, the first teaching of Vedanta, perhaps this person, this career, this relationship, this family member is to escalate this journey. As working in that old age home escalated my journey. And by the way, when I first met Sri Brahmananda, I tell this whenever I can, I had everything that people would want. I had a lovely husband, still do, thank goodness. I had a wonderful son, he still is. I had a very promising career. So why wasn't I happy? What was wrong? I was on fire. I was on fire. What happened, so that you don't cancel out the nice husband and the child, you don't want to do that, you don't want to miss that. But until I realized there was a deeper goal, something that could only happen when there was a transformation in me. Until that happened, I couldn't really appreciate him. I couldn't really see him. I liked him, I loved him, but I didn't value him. I wasn't able to value my son because I was so on fire. If your house is burning, you don't notice how nice your husband looks as he runs out. Right? You don't notice how adorable your son was. He came to you and jumped in your arms as you took him from the burning building. You don't say, he's very adorable. Your house is on fire. Your mind is on fire. So you can't appreciate the beauty that's around you. You can't appreciate the grace that is around us all the time. It's there just for the eyes to see. What time is it? I lose time here. I'm just going to go, let's see. It's too important to skip. I'll just read another 2 paragraphs. And now this master says, when you say, what am I achieving? Where am I reaching? What have I done with my whole life? Poor Mrs. Mendelssohn, when she asked, what have I done with my whole life? Her son had been a very great man who passed away before she did. He was the head of some union, remember? Very powerful union, labor leader. And she didn't care about that anymore. What had made her so proud, it didn't matter anymore. The son was gone. She had no visitors. She was alone. And she said, what's it all about? What does it mean to live 90 years? And nothing has happened, really. And this master says, and you cannot go back. The time that is wasted cannot be returned to you. There's no way. You cannot get it back. You cannot say, well, wait a minute. I'd like to start again. That's not possible. So then by the time you become old, you become more and more sad. And that sadness is not because of physical age. That sadness is because now you realize what you've done to yourself. You have made a house. Of course, you have succeeded. You are rich. You have attained prestige in the eyes of others. But here's a question for us. What about our own eyes? Have we attained prestige there? Because now you feel the pain. You're feeling the suffering of a wasted life, of time lost. Death is coming nearer. That's why we're sad later on. And soon, not us, we won't be sad. We won't even believe that death is coming nearer. What is death? The same thing happens when we go into deep sleep. We're not afraid of going into deep sleep. So why are we afraid of going into that incredible moment between lifetimes? How do I know it's incredible? He told me. The enlightened tell us. The enlightened tell us. They tell it's extraordinary. Even those ordinary people who experience the near-death experience, haven't they come back and said it's extraordinary? Didn't they tell it to Dr. Kubler-Ross? Didn't many of them say, I was so sorry to find myself back again? It was incredible there. He's saying, this emptiness is inner. You cannot fill it with anything that you can get in the world outside, unless you get yourself. Therefore, the insistence of Jesus, who said, even a camel can pass through the eye of a needle, but a man who is rich cannot pass through the gate of heaven. Why? What's wrong with a rich man? Nothing. Nothing's wrong with a rich man. The emphasis is that one who has wasted his life in accumulating things of the world, that is what is meant by a rich man, cannot enter into the kingdom of God, because there only one who has attained the inner enters. He cannot deceive at the gate of heaven. He cannot enter because he will be too wasted. He will be too rotten, a ruin. He cannot dance at the door. He cannot sing. He cannot enter with a certain significance that he has attained in his life. He is uprooted. He possessed much, but he never possessed himself. And that's the poverty. If you possess yourself, you are rich, really rich. If you don't possess yourself, you may be an emperor, but you are poor. I'm going to stop there because it seemed perfect. Any questions before I read a very short final reading? I still have it. I've been carrying this around, never been able to get to it. And tonight I'm able to get to it. And guess what the title is? You read it. Success and failure. Success and failure. How can you get 3 readings that are all synchronized together? See, everyone's sneezing now. It's true. It's true. Any questions about what you just said? How many of you understand this very profoundly? You see, you can understand it intellectually. We can all say, many faces here, there are 30 people, 40 people. Many faces were nodding. This is true. Even new people were nodding. This is true. This is true. It's one thing to understand, hear this on the intellectual level. The mind can, we're all very bright, otherwise we wouldn't be here. We're all very intelligent. One thing for the mind to say, I understand this. I've seen this. I've known this. Another thing for it to act out of the meditative mind, as we said earlier. so that instantly there's a revolutionary change in you, and you find that there are certain things that are dropped now. They just dropped away. When I met Virgie, I never thought anybody could talk me out of the career I had finally found that made me sublimely happy. I was in it 10 years, and happier and happier and happier, because I was going up and up and up. I met him, Virgie. Within 3 months, I forgot all about it, because I thought that was my treasure, my salvation. He started exuding, not talking about that too, but exuding that fragrance. And he hadn't $1 in his pocket. It's a real renunciate. We put dollars in his pocket. He took them out and gave them to other people. He didn't like money, except for the ashram he liked. But even as you're sitting there, I guarantee you will forget 99.5% of what I'm saying, because it used to happen to us. But you will go back and be a little more disenchanted with the old world. It will have lost its sheen, because you've had a seed planted in you, and it's already starting to open up. There's something here. I don't mean the place alone. There's something about these words that instantly, including myself, instantly bring us back to our real life, our real self. And then, thank you, and then you enjoy everything more. Everything takes on a new life, a new beauty, because you don't need it anymore. It's when you need it desperately that it can't have the beauty. It can't have. It's like if you've wanted a child all your life and something changed your mind about that. Now you can really look at other children and enjoy them. Before you couldn't. Too painful. Because you wanted a child so badly. And now you can enjoy it. Now the person who's your friend, you can love unconditionally, because you don't need that person to love you unconditionally. You can love her or him unconditionally, because what you need is the life within. And the rest is just dessert. That's the chocolate cake. Chocolate cake. You know what happens? You read these teachings and you become a little silly, because I become silly all the time. It's not old age. I was like that at 40. It transports you back into the bliss that you are. There's nothing more delicious than being in the now, with all the past problems fading away. In the afternoon, after meditation in the temple, people came downstairs and asked some wonderful questions. I call them wonderful because they were practical. They had to do with taking what we absorbed and putting it into practice in some way. Or at least, how does knowing that, people were asking, how does knowing that help me with this particular life problem? Does anybody have anything on your mind that will address that? Because we're full of problems in our everyday life. Can you see, for example, how this new understanding, this new awareness, as you said, will eliminate some suffering, some aspect of your suffering, because that's the reason they come and sacrifice so much. So much they're trying desperately to help us, to relieve us of our suffering. Years after his stroke, when it would have been very easy for him to go off into samadhi, not eat anything fast for a long time, he could have just drifted off and not have to live the life of a body half paralyzed, which he didn't live anyway. He was always above it. But there were difficulties living after a stroke. But he did it for us. He remained 10 years in that condition. It makes me cry sometimes, because he didn't have to. That was his greatest sacrifice for us. So what you're hearing in his papers, his words, other great masters, if we don't feel the seriousness of it when we're here, then we'll just go again to the end of this life and have to repeat it again and again and again. It's just a matter of waking up. Anything could have awakened. Was there anything that stood out for anyone here? Yes. Was he rich? Inside, the richest man I ever knew. Was he rich on the outside? You know, everything he made when he came to this country, he turned over to the ashram. Once the ashram was open. But he could have been rich. And he probably, I think at one time in India, since he was a neurosurgeon, he must have been very rich. Money that he earned here, I know because I was his secretary in those early days. He would have me send the money he earned when he was working at various hospitals. He sent all money except what he needed to live on back to his village. And they opened a post office and a school with that money. But it was his example that really inspired us and woke us up, because he was that too. He worked as a surgeon. He also worked in a free clinic where he trained students he could certify them to be doctors because he was a licensed doctor there. And he gave up his services free. And he was a yoga master there too. That was going on. But he had a family, he had a wife, he had children. But at some point, he felt the calling. He had a guru. His guru's right above you. He felt the calling to come to America because, as he said to his teacher, I was about to tell you. Then we'll stop because I don't think I have time now to get to that. I have time. He had a recurring dream for years and years when he was in India. And he saw a city of lights. In the evening, he saw a whole city lit up. And one year, he was with his guru only 3 years. At the end of 3 years, he came to his guru and said, my old disciples are calling me. That's the reason I have this dream. That dream is of a big city that I believe is New York. Guruji had vision. He had powers. And he came here and found very, very devoted people. There are people here sitting in this room who've been here 30, 40 years serving this ashram, serving him, even though he left his body. So there was that connection. But he was a guru who went all around the world. However, now I have to be a little I don't know what the word is, but I have to be a little one-pointed with you, because at some point he would tell us, when we started asking these curious questions about him, why did you get married? Why did you have children? How can enlightened men have children? How is it that an enlightened man could have a stroke? We asked these questions. And that's when he gave us his one and only mantra, which was, mind your own business. He gave that out. Our business being, we have to find out why we are doing things, why we are suffering, why we are going here and there. The gurus are on a very different plane. They're not in time and space. To them, countries have no borders for them. They go where the magnetic pull is. After a while, we loved to travel in the past. We don't need it now. Where are we going to go? Our real journey is within. I don't mean to be rude or anything, but that's what he said. We shouldn't waste our time trying to figure him out, because you can't. He was an enigma. He was unpredictable. And that's what we loved about him at the end. We didn't want him to be just like us. We wanted him to have a different view of the world, a different view of us. And I just realized what he would have said to you. Why didn't he go to China? He said, I did. Very nice country. Where else? You have some other place in mind? Turkey, I've been there too. Very lovely. As we know, he went around the world 3 times. 3 times. But how fascinating that he felt the pull here. How lucky. How lucky for us. Because you know how rare it is to have a living guru. You know how rare it is to have people who sat with him 30 years and know they're just radios. So it's just like sitting at his feet when you sit with Krishna and Karana and Mabha. Yes. How old is he? When? When he passed, we all have different numbers. Bharati has one number, I have another number. And the problem is that, and I'll tell you this story is more interesting than the one I was going to read, so I'll carry it again. All right, I will read that too. But the problem is that Guruji was originally born in the month of September. We know that because he told us that. But on his driver's license, it said March 6th with a date. And we couldn't understand that until one day he told us, and I may have a few of the details not exactly right, but this is the essence of the story. He and a little friend, when they were young children, maybe 8, 9, something that age, were playing together in a field, and both of them ate poisoned mushrooms, deadly, lethal mushrooms. Both were rendered unconscious. They went into coma, but Guruji had eaten more, so he remained in the coma. They carried them back when they found them to the house. The other child came out. They flushed his system out. Guruji didn't come out. He was, his vital signs were gone. His father, who was an astrologer, couldn't accept this. And so he was laid out, body was laid out on the cremation pyre. And he said, let's wait. Now his father, being an astrologer, had many friends and many associates who were, he was also equivalent to a Supreme Court judge, but known to be a great astrologer. And so many great people from around the area came to pay their respects because they heard about this tragic incident. And one man, I don't remember if he was an astrologer or not, but one elderly man went before the pyre and meditated and came back to Gurji's father and said, not yet, wait. There's something I'm feeling. Wait. Oh, I'm sorry, Gurji was 6 years old. I remember now. 6 years old when this happened. And sure enough, within hours or the next day, it doesn't matter, Gurji suddenly came out of the coma and chose that date as his birthday, March. That we understood, but we never knew if he changed the year also, because nobody knows that. He didn't say, and we don't know. So some people have him 6 years older when he left his body. I felt if he changed the month, he changed the day, the year also. I felt. So what makes me happy is to have him at the age of 76 when he left his body. Because when I met him, he was around 45. He told me that. And I had caught a peek at his driver's license one day, and I thought I saw a certain date. But it doesn't matter. He was the youngest person I ever knew. He was the most ancient person I ever knew. You just forgot everything about time and age around him. We can, on a night when we get a group like this, and we give out cookies and you become talkative and you don't want to leave because of all the sugar you ingested, we can feel that he's back. He's here. Because we used to have the greatest evenings together with him. And the fact that you keep coming back to this ashram weekend after weekend, it's not that you come once a year. I see people, you return. Again, maybe not every weekend, but you keep coming back. Some of you decided to live here because this is where the bliss is for her. So there's something that feels that magnetic pull back to your real home. And Gurji called this your real home. So come back whenever you can, whenever you're available.
So take a deep breath. And now as you breathe out, release all the language, all the words. This will only be 60 seconds. So feel yourself letting go and opening up to this now. Feeling it, perceiving it, imbibing it. Sometimes it only takes 1 minute to reconnect with your real life, your real home. I am that I am. That is our home. Krishna Devi, would you lead us in our traditional prayer? Japita Tvameva Bandhus Chasaka Tvameva Thank you, Krishna Devi. And if some of you are feeling very high, that you may need a designated driver, take 2 cookies. Chocolate chip is a great way to come back to earth.